Hello, is £150 a bottle of whiskey good value? How do you shake up the whiskey market? And how do you build a net zero green distillery a stone's throw from where Madonna was married? Keep listening to find out. I'm John Beattie. Welcome to Cask to Glass, the whiskey podcast, where I explore the heritage and flavour of Scotland's national drink and the world's favourite spirit. In this episode, I talked to Phil and Simon Thompson from Dornoch Distillery for a real insight into crowdfunding a very different and successful whiskey model. Phil and Simon, hello. Thank you so much for talking to me.
Oh, our pleasure. And yeah, thanks for having us on. So,
Pleasure. Who's Phil? Who's Simon?
I'm Phil.
All right.
Yep.
Listen, I always ask everybody, I know you've got some whiskey in front of you there. How do you both take your whiskey?
Oh, generally straight, possibly a small amount of dilution if required, but always taste it straight first. Then, figure out if it needs water or not.
Phil?
Yeah. Depends on the circumstances. I would certainly say that during a working day, we'd be a bit more analytical. So straight dilution, extra dilution, but at home as is, or I do like a whiskey soda. Highball is very popular in our house.
Take me back there. The reason I'm talking to you is that Hamish Malcolm mentioned you, the dram caddy, and he said you must speak to the guys at Dornoch Distillery. They've got a great history, and so just talk me through that history, because this wasn't always the case. It wasn't always a distillery. Give me the background. What happened?
Yeah, so Dornoch Distillery's, she's been operational coming on 8 years now. So yeah, back in the day, we used to run the family hotel whiskey bar. That led to us kind of taking on whiskey as a bit of a hobby. We would end up taking it a little bit too seriously, start collecting, start falling in love with older styles of whiskey, start going to live auctions back in the day before it was all online auctions, picking up bottles for ourselves for our bar. Got a good reputation of sourcing extreme rarities that people didn't know and putting them on the bar at good prices. And that kind of led to us getting integrated with the sort of European and global connoisseur scene. And yeah, from there, we kind of started heavily researching older styles of whiskey production, trying to figure out where certain flavors and intensities of flavors that existed in old bottles that you didn't really see, or at least not in the same level of intensity that you do today. So we did a lot of work theoretically reverse engineering old style whiskey, which then eventually turned into some practical experimentation, which turned into building our own tiny baby distillery. And and that's led to where we are there. That at least that takes you to the starting blocks, at least.
Yeah. Well, Phil, then, before we get to that, because as I said to you last night when we were chatting, I've looked through your accounts. You're very different to most whiskey companies' accounts. Most whiskey companies I see have either borrowed a lot of money or they've got a lot of share capital in. They've spent a lot of cash on capital stuff. But before we talk about that, you mentioned there, or I think Simon mentioned, the global connoisseur market. What is that? How big is the global and European connoisseur market? Just describe it.
I think it kind of came at the end of the sort of the last downturn in the whiskey market, when you start seeing a lot of single malts available on the market from different distilleries, single casks, bottlers. You obviously had famous bottlers back in the 70s in Italy that a lot were bottling legendary whiskeys, 70s into the 80s, into the 90s. And then obviously with the rise of like Signatory coming through in the late 80s in Scotland, picking and bottling amazing single casks and picking up the pieces of, from a whiskey lock and having the pick of the bunch. So a lot of these sort of bottlings, Douglas Lang as well, would end up being shared and opened and tasted, and they were accessible as well. The price points were accessible. It wasn't an expensive commodity. I mean, you can probably argue in hindsight, into the late 90s, early 2000s, there's probably these sorts of whiskies were underpriced and kind of going the other way. But So that was kind of there was a real circuit, especially around Europe, into the Scandi countries, Northern Europe, who were, lots of whiskey clubs who would travel to Scotland. They'd open the old bottles, question the differences in style. Why does Lafroig from 1995 tastes different to Lafroig from 1965, and we entered into a lot of these conversations and tried to understand it from there. So yeah, it was a really cool place to be, and it still is. It's just become like less accessible, I think, for people. It was kind of the sort of thing you could do as a hobby. Willing to go and bid at auction €100 for a bottle was probably a big deal, or like €200 or €300. Whereas you're like, yeah,
On a fairly standard salary, you could participate really well if that was your hobby, like it was for us. It's certainly become more difficult to do it on kind of an everyman salary these days.
That kind of influence does a lot, because it opened our eyes to a lot of kind of really niche independent bottlings, niche kind of bottlings over the years that were a bit unusual. So you would taste old Samarolis from Italy and intertrade bottlings, and some of the excellent old signatory stocks that were just like what Andrew was bottling in the 90s. It's like, he casts 30-year-old Ardbegs from the 60s and Lafroig from the 60s and Longmorns and just amazing stocks, because these guys kind of had the pick of what was available. That was, and it was no doubt a struggle to try and sell it at the time, but having some of these whiskies as flavor references is really important, and it's helped guide us in what we wanted to do in Dornoch and subsequently into Struy Distillery as well.
And Simon, I guess what happens is because you're business guys, it becomes trading as well, doesn't it? You get a bar, but you're trading. Were you trading? Is that what was happening? So, because it must, you've got to be a certain type of person to be able to make money. Not everyone can make money. Most people think they can, but you guys have, by trading, by doing the things pretty simply.
Yeah, I mean, the independent bottling is what we're well known for now, and that wasn't even in the original business plan for Dornoch Distillery, as much as it had a functioning business plan. We had a little bit of cash left over after getting operational, and we'd lined up a chap as our Japanese importer for our gin that we're developing, and he asked to be able to do a bottling of whiskey for Japan. So we organized the first single cask. We'd done a few single casks previously, but nothing particularly commercially minded. It was it was for our own bar. For every year we'd do a crazy whiskey blowout with a whole group of hobbyists, and we would arrange the bottlings. But nothing really particularly commercially minded. So we did the first Thompson Brothers, as it is now, bottling
About 10 years ago now.
10 years ago?
6, yeah.
Yeah, okay, almost 10 years ago. And
Just consider it accidental independent bottling. Unplanned.
Yeah, it sold really well in the UK. We used the money we made from that to do another couple, and so on. 1 became 2, 2 became 4. Mostly buying and picking from market ready stocks, and over the years you kind of claw your way up the side of the hill, up the mountain, getting better and better access to both liquid and pricing, and part of that is to do with people trusted us to make good picks. They saw that we're putting them out at really good prices, and we kind of started to enter into a contract with our customers whereby if we keep doing good things at the correct prices, then they would keep buying it all really quickly. And then we started to see the value of the velocity of money. So we thought less about margin and more about the velocity of money. If we can buy market ready mature stock that's really good, get it out at the right price that we would be happy to pay as enthusiasts, it sells out. We get money back in quickly, and we can do the whole thing. Whereas we've seen other people who have been a little bit spicy on their prices, and it just gummins everything up because that bottle then starts to sell slowly. The retailers don't sell out so quickly, so they don't reorder so quickly, and in the space of time, it might take that hypothetical expensive bottler to kind of work through one one turning of the wheel. We could have done it multiple times.
Sure.
So yeah, we just kind of entered into that contract with our customer base. We do things right, make good picks, put it out at the right price. They buy it, it sells out quickly, and as long as we both keep our part of that, as long as we keep selling out in good order, we can keep doing it at good prices. And here we are 8 years later.
Yeah. And
Yeah, that's
Phil, just explain that then. The velocity of money. The velocity of money is some people lay something down, leave it for a long time, but you it's cast the glass, get it done quickly and well, and respected, and get the money back in quickly. That's the velocity of
Yeah.
money. Am I right?
Yeah, so it's kind of a little bit through necessity. So everything we were making, the priority was to pay for Dornoch production. So it was all about making liquid at Dornoch Distillery. That's the end goal. That's always been like the zenith that we're aiming towards. And because we, as you mentioned earlier, we didn't have a lot of capital in the business. It was all about just turning that over as quick as we possibly could and bring it back in. And it's, I think as a company, it's allowed us to be really nimble and work with like small parcels of stock pretty quickly, which I think gives us a really good advantage over some of our peers in the industry. We were speaking recently to somebody who said that it would take them about a year to get a product ready, and it is a bigger company. And I was just like, I would get that done in less than a month. Let's just get it. It's not that complicated to do. And that's just the way we've always thought. And I suppose having both kind of grown up through hospitality, it's kind of like you just do what it takes to get it over the line, and you find a way to make it work. And ultimately taking that same outlook and philosophy into our own business, and then always putting the customer first. It's like ultimately, Simon mentioned earlier about the enthusiast scene in the late 90s, early 2000s. It's like a normal person on a normal salary could afford to be a whiskey collector of some form. So for us, it was always about looking at ourselves and saying, would you buy this? On a normal salary, would you buy this? Does it represent good value? And we've always applied that to kind of everything we've tried to do through Thompson Brothers.
Simon, then tell me about the distillery, and it's a bit different. Tell me about it and what you're producing, what you're selling, what you're making.
Yeah, so because of the success of the other sides of the business, and maybe just elaborate a tiny bit more on the independent bottling. Most independent bottlers will do everything under contract between a number of different companies, third-party warehouses, bottling halls, transportation companies, which is quite a slow process, whereas we're full stack here in Dornoch. We have our own bottling hall, our own warehouses. We do our own UK distribution. We do our own international logistics. We even got our own bonded transportation. It's a long wheelbase transit. But if we need to go and get 5 casks, we can just drive and get it instead of waiting to be on one of the circuits of one of the bonded haulage companies. So we have that huge quality control, and it gives a huge velocity advantage, whereas doing everything externally can take a very long time. And that's certainly how we started. And it was a big accelerant to us bringing everything in-house. But ultimately, it's led to us hitting a capacity limit of our own site. So we've kind of hit a wall as to like how much we can do until we expand with our new Strui operation. But in terms of Dornoch Distillery, it's very much a no compromise production. The setup's a little bit scrappy. There's things we've built ourselves, things we've modified, but we spare no expense when it comes down to process, ingredients, and time. So we probably have deliberately the most expensive cost of production, even if you're to ignore the small scale, just based on we only use heritage varieties of barley. So our cutoff point is the 1960s. If the barley variety was in use in the 1960s or earlier, we've even worked on some varieties that have been brought back from seed bank. So things like Scotch Common, Scotch Annat. Our bread and butter is the likes of Marsalter, Plumage Archer. We'll do a little bit of Golden Promise.
Floor malted as well,
yeah.
whenever possible.
Vast majority of that is floor malted and organic. Yeah, so that combined with not using any modern distillers yeast. So we use brewing strains of yeast, as was the way in the 1960s and earlier. A lot of the time we're using spent brewer's yeast from local breweries, which again used to be a very common thing. There's some interesting contributors to flavour that can occur there, but we'd really go off into the weeds and not
Something for an hour and a half, both.
yeah, but not.
Ah,
So that combined with extra long fermentations, 7 days is standard for us, and then very slow distillations with manual cut points. So we make our cut points based on the sense of smell, sense of taste of whoever's running the stills on that particular day.
It allows them to kind of slow down, speed up where required. So when it's coming towards the cut point, they'll really kind of slow down, and allows them to make a really kind of concise cut.
You get slow the spirit still right down. You get better definition between the fractions and the ability to make a more accurate cut point. But yeah, basically everything's geared towards maximizing old style quality at great expense of material time, lower yield. So yeah, it's one extreme. Probably not a scalable model. Maybe there's not enough people in the world to appreciate that. But on a much small scale, we can do that, and we don't release a lot.
Right.
We've released very, very little of our own stocks of Dornoch, and then the majority of what we have sold has been buybacks from our original crowdfunders. So the highest tier in original crowdfunder was to get a Octave cask, and so a lot of what we have released has been bought back from our original year one crowdfunders.
It's a rewards-based crowdfunding package in the early days. So
I saw that you originally funded it by a bit by crowdfunding, didn't you?
yeah, we basically sold our house and put that all in. Our theory was, if we're asking our customers to give us a couple of grand each, then we need to be seen to have serious skin in the game as well. And it
Did you really? You sold your house?
yeah, me and Simon, yeah.
Yeah, no, got started with no debt, no shareholders, but no house. Just the
There's nothing going to motivate you more.
yeah, just our own money, our house, and the contributions from a rewards based crowdfunding. So that was all.
He's a bit of enterprise funding as well, isn't it?
Yeah, we got a little bit from HIE, Highlands Enterprise, and so that got us up and running and off the ground. And and because we've had to fight for it, one day at a time, there was no big chunk of capital. We had to be very, very efficient and fast. There wasn't much of a buffer available to us. So we made it all work one way or another, and
Yeah, it's working, and plainly, you're different. Again, having looked through, being an accountant, being a chartered accountant, having looked through the accounts, it's different. I'm on your website; it's even different. It's all question marks. There's a big mystery malt. I mean, it's very. So Phil, you talk me through this. Then I go on your website. Instead of having some glossy product, there's a black bottle with a question mark on it.
Yeah,
And
so
it talks about mystery malts.
yeah, that's a specific product. So we obviously have the Thompson Brothers single cask. So we do
Yeah.
blended products as well,
Yeah.
which have been pretty successful and won lots of awards. Won the right awards, consumer-focused awards, as opposed to the ones that you pay money for. And I won't get into that just now. I'm sure.
Well,
there's
you
plenty.
might as well. Hey.
Yeah. There's a second. Yeah, is this kind
I'll
of?
sponsor the big dinner. You give me the award. Is that how it works?
Well, you said it, John.
I'm an outsider. I'm asking.
Yeah, I don't know, man. I'm maybe a bit cynical about these things,
Sure.
but I was approached by somebody who runs a competition at the weekend, and they said, "Oh, you haven't entered this competition. I can take some stock away with me back, and we can put it in the competition." I was like, "Oh, brilliant, cool. Do I have to pay for that as well?" And they're like, "Yeah, it's $600 an entry." And I was like, "Well, I kind of sell everything I make, so I'm okay, thank you." But I understand it has a place in the ecosystem, but
Yeah.
you are funding it, so there's going to be it's kind of like school sports these days. It's like everybody's going to be a winner.
there's great ones where they have blind taste. Blind taste also ones if we judges from the industry whose palates you recognise. And then there's the Oswalds, which we love as well, which is was are good. You know, fully independent. You don't enter. You get picked by a very large collective of online reviewers, YouTubers, whiskey writers, etc. So
Yeah, so rewinding onto the mystery malt. So yeah, we do obviously the blends, Thompson Brothers. We do Dornoch as well, as kind of individual products. Thompson Brothers tends to be single cask or small batch vattings of kind of unique things, and the mystery malt's a fairly new product. So we're on Series 3, which we've just launched and sold out, which was about 5,000 bottles.
Yeah.
So the idea is, and this is a product that we kind of was conceived in a bit of a buoyant whiskey market for a down market. So we were looking for something which was always going to be reasonably priced and was going to give the consumer that excitement that they were looking for, and would give the distillery companies essentially a bit of free marketing. You know, it's the opportunity to go in front of a new consumer for the very first, possibly for the first time, or to convert someone who may have tried your liquid before and not been impressed by it, and it's an opportunity to convert. So essentially all the inputs are different. So say you've got 5,000 bottles, we may have 24 different single malts in it, and it'll be bottled as single malt Scotch whisky at 48.5% alcohol. And the contents are only revealed when the seal is broken, and then on the top of the bottle you see the contents of the liquid. So you could have something, for example, you could have like a 6 or 7 year old Ardent American all the way through to like a 27, 28, 30 year old single malt at that end, and you pay £65 for it. The website gives you a breakdown. So if you pick up the bottle in the shop, you can scan a QR code, takes you to the website, and it gives you a breakdown. Here's your percentage likelihood. So you as the consumer have, you have your eyes open, you can see exactly what you might be buying, and you can make that choice and that decision. And ultimately the benchmark is £65. And we, as we talked about, a lot for us is reputation, and ultimately we have to maintain that as best we can. So offering fair value to consumers always there. So that baseline value always has to be £65. So if I buy a bottle, I can't go away and think, I could have bought that for 45 quid. So there needs to be that kind of, like Simon says, you're entering into a contract with your consumer.
Yeah.
So it's been really successful, and it's helped we started working with a lot of the newer wave of distilleries. Have been really excited to get involved, and it's helped expose their product to a new consumer who may well be shelf bias, who may well be, looking at it going, well, I'm not buying a 4-year-old X distillery, but then they taste it in the mystery malt, and as we found at the whiskey show the weekend, they're impressed, and they feel like, oh, I wouldn't have had that, I wouldn't have bought that otherwise. So they've been introduced to, that company's, in theory, has a new consumer who is interested in their products. And it's not, and the other good point about it is it's non-cannibalistic on the shelf. So it's not like a Thompson Brothers bottling I will use Ardent American here, Thompson Brothers Ardent American against a OB Ardent American single cask on the shelf, and we're price matching, and we've got to make sure that, the consumer's got a fair decision to make. Whereas it's like, it's not going to take over somebody who was going to buy an Ardent American OB. It's not, they're not going to move away from it. So you remove that kind of competitive nature on the shelf as well.
Yeah, and we've got participation from a lot of the big boys as well. So we're aiming for a little bit like Scotch Malt Whisky Society does, where there's almost total industry participation. So bar a couple of two and a bit individual distillery holdouts and one slightly bigger company, we've got almost the entire whiskey industry on board and participating, because we really try to present it as just an absolute no-brainer 360-degree win for the companies that participate, for us, for our customers, for the retailers, for the distributors. It's a big faff for us to put together, and we knew that. But like Phil said, we designed it during the good times as something that would work really well in a down market and would be able to leverage a down market. So yeah, it's been doing that really, really well. But the idea was everyone wins, everyone does great. That's given it legs, and yeah,
Juicer all the way through to the consumer. Yes, everyone's got to win.
Yeah. And batch 1, 2, and 3, each one's sold out in synchronized UK launches in about 24 hours online. And then batch 3 is also partly gone out to export as well. So we'll see how the rest of the world feels about it. But there seems to be a lot of bullishness with some importers who think it's going to do great guns. It seems it's had a good reception online as well. But yeah, as long as okay, as a customer, you're taking a gamble, but you're never going to lose that gamble. You're either going to do well or you're going to do really, really well. So yeah, it's not really a gamble because you know you're going to win. You just don't know by how much you're going to win.
Yeah.
I know you guys are really busy today. I've got you for 5 or so more minutes. So tell me about, Phil, tell me about Dornoch as a sense of place in the whiskey, because again, I said in the previous podcast, having been up in Fort William on the Harry Potter train, very conscious that I was surrounded by people who'd come to Scotland to do the scenery and the whiskey and the golf. And the whiskey bit given the train was a Ben Nevis whiskey. So they all had bought Ben Nevis whiskey miniatures. And people go do the Spey Valley, they'll do the Islands. What's the sense of place of Dornoch? And do you get enough? Can you visit your distillery? Is it a place that people should come to for whiskey?
Yeah, well, 100%. So we love where we're based. So I mean,
It's beautiful.
Sutherland's an amazing area, and it takes in all sorts of landscapes. Very dramatic up in the northwest, all the way down to sort of the nice kind of fertile area on this coast. And I think we're really proud to be, the third Sutherland distillery. We have Clynelish and Brora, which is some pretty good neighbours to have. So we're really, really love the fact that it is such a iconic whiskey area, but it only had 2 distilleries for so long. Dornoch itself, I mean, obviously, you've got the golf, and we're really cautious about sort of playing too heavily into that with anything. Not that we really do much marketing, but we've always been really well supported by the team up at Royal Dornoch Golf Club, through our products going in, and also just our support, having another hospitality business. So it's a brilliant place, a brilliant part of the world. And I think it's like the way we've tried to position ourselves. So you can't visit the distillery, but we are an open doors operation, and we're on the street. So the way we convey it to our customers is always, if doors are open, you can look in and you can have a look. And if the guys aren't too busy, then they'll have a chat with you. And that's generally the way we've tried to operate. We obviously have the Dornoch Castle Hotel, so we're bang in the center of town, and we've tried to make that a really kind of like egalitarian venue, and it's really accessible. And you've got glasses of whiskey in there that are £150 a glass, and just to kind of caveat and say that's actually really good value. You do get places in Scotland that charge £150 a glass, and it's terrible value, but that does represent, for what the product is, it's very good value. But we've got everything from like £3 up to that kind of spread, and the same with our food and drink offering. So Dornoch's a kind of weird place where you've got Royal Dornoch Golf Club, very expensive to play a round of golf. T-sheet fills up very quickly. People coming in by helicopter, staying at Skibo Castle, private members club, 30,000+ pounds a year within a 5-mile radius. And then you've got, camping and caravan parks and people coming on the NC 500 and fancy cars. So it's like a real mix of people. So it could be like, a family that can only afford 1 week a year for a holiday, and it's up in Dornoch, and that's the place to go. Or it could be somebody coming in by helicopter. So as a venue at Dornoch Castle, we've always tried to kind of be open to everyone. I think that's really, really important as a kind of destination. But we've created a little bit of a whiskey destination there, and that was really important to us, and built it up over, it's now 25 years that the castle's been in our family. So we've bottled some pretty incredible whiskey for it this year, which has been quite fun.
Yeah.
Where do people come from, Simon? Where do people come from to come and taste whiskey with you guys?
Yeah, so I think in the early days, it tended to be people who were maybe on their way up to see Glenmort, because we're kind of sandwiched between, you've got north of Inverness, you've got Glenord, Teagnach, Dalmore, Balblair, Glenmorangie, then there's us, and then you've got Brora, Clynelish, and then you keep going north and you hit Gulpney, and now Loughburn and 8 Doors as well up there. So we were kind of on that sort of like fringe whiskey trail of the guys who are really into the whiskey, and they'd already done Speyside, Campbelltown, Islay, but now we've kind of built it out as a destination in itself and give people a good excuse to come up. And part of that's to do with keeping the selection really interesting, high quality, keeping the prices right. The more expensive the drams get, we run a lower and lower margin, consider it, a kind of a cash value transaction. Always remember sitting down in a bar, 20 odd years ago now, with two guys who are both multimillionaires, whiskey enthusiasts, but they knew the value of whiskey and the value of money. And we're at a bar where they ramped up the margins as the bottles got more expensive. So these guys, and myself to a lesser extent, if we're presented with a good value proposition, we probably would have spent a few £100 in that bar. But because you felt that you were having the piss taken a little bit, you just had, had Talisker 10 and a Lagavulin 16-year-old and moved on. And it's kind of like, right, you can't take the piss. You have to offer value at every level.
And that was if we brought that philosophy into our independent bottling as well. And we started here, that was the way they always thought in the bar, which was, Dornoch is not wasn't a whiskey destination. How are you going to get people into your bar? As Simon said, it might be the third trip to Scotland. The first one was Speyside and Island, Campbelltown, followed by, where'd you go next? North Highlands, or you're on the route up to Orkney. So for us, it was all about offering, if you had good value proposition, word would spread pretty quickly that this is a really great bar with great bottles and the prices are good.
Yeah.
And it is just like that simple.
Because it doesn't show up in a spreadsheet. All the business lost by getting your value proposition wrong. And with our independent bottling, we've got really strong direct sales, a lot of which we have to run through ballots. And because we've got that quick turnaround on it, we get really fast feedback from our customers based on how many people have entered a ballot or how many people have bought a bottle or how oversold you were, as to, where people are for prices. And we obviously research, we don't just go, this is going to be the margin for this product. We go, okay, what is the comparative value? What are other people doing? What do we think it should be? What can we get away with doing it for? Where's our,
what can we get away
from? No, as in on the lower end,
No.
because, you want to sell out. And
Yeah, you have a quickly. Yeah, for sure.
Keep everyone happy. So we do it all again next month.
I was going to say, I think your question was, where do people come from? And a bit of everywhere. We're definitely seeing more kind of Asian consumers coming, some more South Koreans coming. And I think, through kind of online whiskey communities, the rise of like Whiskey Base, you've seen, people have that knowledge. They know where to go. They don't have to it's not word of mouth at a whiskey fair anymore. It's like all the information's there online if you want to find it.
People go out of their way to come here now. It's becoming a destination for whiskey because of the quality and the value proposition of the whiskey bar, and that's great for us in the off season as well. Dornoch gets packed out in the summer, lots of tours and lots of golf, but then you have to really fight for it in the shoulder months, and the shoulder months and the winter is how you do there is the difference between a good year and a bad year, because the summers are always crazy.
It's hospitality throughout the Highlands, isn't it?
Yeah,
So tough.
Yeah. But all over. But more and more people coming as a destination for us, for the bar, for the whiskey.
Simon, Phil, thank you. Again, I could have talked for hours, but I know you're busy, so thank you so much for that. It's interesting, isn't it? Because Dornoch is Skibo Castle, brilliant golf course. You guys, Whiskey World, and I'm really interested that you don't do any marketing. You talk about the price point going as as efficient as it can be to generate cash. It's interesting. And again, looking at your accounts, it shows up. So thanks for talking to me. I appreciate it. Thank you.
Our pleasure, John. And we didn't even talk about the new distillery.
No.
Well, we'll talk about. Go on. Let's talk about the new distillery. We can prolong this one.
Off-grid distillery as well. Why
Yeah,
not?
you said that. Go on then. The off-grid new distillery.
So we're deep in that just now. So new distillery, you got planning, building warrants, borehole water tests, land testing, archaeological trenching. So we're just getting ready to get stuck into the actual build itself, and so we've got a whole ton of equipment already secured, lined up. terrible time to build a new distillery from one point of view.
Terrible time to fundraise as well.
Yeah, terrible time to fundraise. But the flip side, we've been saving a fortune on liquidation sales, second-hand equipment, negotiating with suppliers. So we're coming in way under budget on plant process energy. Of course, the buildings are trying to pull away from us a little bit, but we're working on that. But yeah, the idea is to have a much larger distillery and to find a sweet spot between what we do at Dornoch and
Still modestly sized. I mean, much larger compared to Dornoch, but modestly sized. Yeah. So about 200, we're looking at about 250,000 litres of alcohol from our own on-site renewable energy. That's but the site will be sized. Plant will be sized for more.
I think we could pull off 300,000 from on-site renewables, and then if we want to put her into overdrive, we could do over 500,000 litres of alcohol. But the idea with the production at Struy is to find a sweet spot between one extreme of what we do in Dornoch and modern production. So trying to make very efficient sacrifices in terms of yield and cost, because we want, Dornoch is just no holds barred, whatever it takes. Whereas Struy is trying to find those sweet spots between old style production, modern production, where yes, it will be a little bit more expensive than standard to make and a little bit lower yielding, but where it's not going to move the needle too much on what we can hopefully come at in X number of years on a shop shelf. We can have a competitive offering on price while trying to outcompete on the quality. And then we've also got massively expanded space for bottling, logistics, warehousing, storage. So it effectively uncaps Thompson Brothers, which has been at its limit, kind of bursting at the seams for the last 3 years. And then we've got our own energy infrastructure that should allow us to be the most energy efficient distillery in Scotland while being fully electrified, totally off fossil fuels. We think we can come in at about a quarter of the energy consumption of a standard distillery, fully electrified, and about half the energy consumption of the most efficient gas-powered plants that are using heat upgrading technologies. So we're looking to be a bit of a demonstrator for the industry, whereby getting off fossil fuels, going net zero, but also having a competitive running cost that's cheaper than the best gas systems. Obviously, there's quite a big upfront capex cost, but we're looking to have that as a demonstrator so that it can be shown to the rest of the industry and pot still distilleries more in general that, if everything works and can be, which it will, and can be proven to be reliable, hopefully. So then hopefully it presents a bit of a no-brainer, and I think the strongest pathway for decarbonising, as in fully decarbonising the Scotch whisky industry. A lot of what we do is quite specific to pot still distilleries, though we've got a lot of unique elements to optimize energy recapture on a pot still distillery. So it's going to be fun and games, and hopefully a good demonstrator for that. Ambitious, but it's all going to work one way or another.
Just need to pay for it now.
Yeah.
Good to talk to you. Thank you.
We're never going home. We're never going home. Can we stay with you in Scotland for the rest of